The alarm cut through my sleep before my eyes even opened, and I was already moving before I understood why. Red light. Not the soft amber of a drill. Real red. The kind that only comes on when something has actually gone wrong. I am Daniel Ashworth, communications liaison for the human delegation aboard the coalition station Farron's Reach. And in that moment, running barefoot down a corridor that did not belong to my species, I had no idea that the next 6 hours would end everything I thought I understood about our place in this galaxy. The corridor lights flickered as I passed a viewport, and through it I saw something that made my stomach drop. A human transport ship, the kind that carried grain, medicine, and machine parts between our colonies, was drifting, not moving under power. Drifting, silent, its hull scorched along one side. I did not know yet that this was only the beginning. I reached the command deck where Grace Ellison, our senior officer, stood with her arms folded, watching a screen that showed the same wreck I had just seen through the window. Her jaw was tight. She did not turn when I entered. "They hit the Amara Station convoy," she said. Her voice was flat, controlled, the voice of someone holding something back with great effort. 11 ships, only 3 made it out. I felt the floor tilt under me, though the station itself had not moved an inch. "Who?" I asked. "The Dravith Assembly," she said. "They are calling it a correction, a message about resource allocation in a sector they claim we were never authorized to use." I had heard that word before. Correction. It was the same soft, bureaucratic language the Dravith always used when they wanted to take something from us without calling it theft. For 3 years I had watched our species absorb this kind of language. We had accepted worse assignments than any other member of the coalition. We had been given patrol routes through the most dangerous debris fields, while other fleets guarded open, peaceful lanes. Our proposals were read into the council record and then quietly ignored while representatives from older civilizations exchanged glances across the chamber, as if humanity were a child who had wandered into a meeting for adults. I had told myself it did not matter, that patience was a strategy, not weakness, that my superiors knew something the rest of us did not. Standing there, watching footage of burning cargo containers spinning silently in the dark, I understood that patience had a limit, and we had just found it. Grace turned to me finally, her eyes sharp and steady. "Get Ambassador Wren on a secure line, now." I moved to the console, my hands shaking slightly as I keyed in the emergency channel. Ambassador Priya Wren answered within seconds, her face lit by the pale glow of her own monitors on the other side of the station. "You saw it," she said, before I could speak. "I saw it," I confirmed. "Good," she said. "Because in 11 minutes, the Dravith representative is going to stand in front of the full council and explain why an unarmed convoy carrying flour and antibiotics required, in his words, a corrective response." Her tone did not shake. If anything, there was something almost calm underneath it, like a person who has been waiting a long time for a moment they already know how to handle. "Are we responding?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. "We already are," she said. "You just have not seen it yet." I did not understand what she meant until I stepped onto the council floor 20 minutes later. The chamber was a massive circular room, ringed with representatives from 14 different species, each seated according to rank determined by seniority in the coalition. Humanity's seats were near the back, close to the door, as they always had been. A polite reminder, every single session, of exactly how little weight our voice carried. The Dravith representative, a tall, pale being named Kestor Vane, stood at the center podium. His skin had the faint blue sheen typical of his species, and his voice carried the practiced smoothness of someone who had given many difficult speeches and expected no real consequences from any of them. "The action taken against the human convoy," he said, "was a necessary correction. Humanity has, on repeated occasions, ignored resource protocols established generations before their species achieved space travel. This was not an act of aggression, it was an act of discipline." A murmur ran through the chamber. Not outrage. Agreement. I watched several other delegates nod slightly, as if this explanation satisfied them completely. I felt anger rise in my chest, hot and immediate, but I said nothing. I had learned, over 3 years, that outbursts changed nothing in this room. Then Ambassador Wren stood. The chamber quieted, not out of respect but out of the mild curiosity people show toward something they expect to be unremarkable. "Representative Orvane," she said, her voice carrying easily across the circular room without any amplification. "You used the word discipline. I would like the record to reflect precisely what that discipline cost. 11 ships, 43 crew members, 12,000 tons of medical supplies bound for 3 human colonies, currently experiencing shortages your own logistics office was notified about 6 weeks ago." Orvain's expression flickered, just slightly. Colonial administration is not the Council's concern. It is when the Council's own supply committee approved the original shipment route, Ren said. I have the authorization codes here, signed by a Dravith logistics officer, dated 41 days ago. The murmur in the chamber changed tone. It grew quieter, more uncertain. Ren continued, and her voice, though calm, seemed to fill every corner of the room. For 3 years, my species has accepted patrol assignments through the most hazardous sectors in this coalition's territory. We have taken every insult with patience, every dismissal with grace, every unequal treatment with the understanding that trust between species takes time to build. We believed that time would eventually earn us the same standing every other member species enjoys. She paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to feel uncomfortable. Today, that patience reached its end. Orvain's composure cracked slightly. Are you threatening this council? No, Ren said. I am informing this council. Humanity's Fleet Command issued a formal directive 4 hours ago. As of this moment, human vessels are authorized to intercept, disable, and reclaim any coalition assets involved in unlawful seizure of human property or personnel, using whatever force is necessary to accomplish that goal. The chamber erupted into noise, dozens of voices speaking at once, but I barely heard any of it, because my mind had caught on one detail. 4 hours ago. That directive had been issued before the attack on the convoy had even finished playing out on our monitors. We had not reacted to the attack. We had been ready for it, or something like it, long before it happened. I looked at Grace, who had followed me into the chamber, and now stood near the doorway with her arms folded, watching the scene unfold with an expression that was almost peaceful. You knew, I whispered to her. You knew this was coming. We suspected, she said quietly. The Dravith have been testing boundaries in that sector for months. We moved additional support ships into position 2 weeks ago, disguised as routine supply runs. I felt something between relief and unease settle in my chest. Relief, because we were not helpless. Unease, because I realized how much had been kept from people like me, people who were supposed to represent our species in these halls every single day. Why wasn't I told? I asked. Because the fewer people who know a plan, the less likely it leaks, she said simply. Nothing personal, Daniel, just necessary. Orvain, meanwhile, was demanding the council intervene, insisting that humanity's directive violated the coalition's founding charter regarding unilateral military action. Several delegates seemed to agree, their voices rising in protest. Ren let them speak for nearly a minute before responding. Show the footage, she said quietly, and a technician at the side of the chamber activated a large display above the council floor. The image that appeared silenced the room entirely. It showed 3 human ships, sleek and fast, closing in on a Dravith vessel identified in the display as the same one responsible for the attack on our convoy. There was no chaos in the footage, no desperate maneuvering. The human ships moved with practiced precision, cutting off every escape route the Dravith vessel attempted, disabling its weapon systems with coordinated, controlled strikes before it could fire a single shot in retaliation. Within 90 seconds, the Dravith ship drifted, powerless, exactly as our convoy had drifted hours earlier. No lives were lost in the recording. That detail mattered enormously to me, and I suspected it mattered just as much to the people who had planned this operation. This was not revenge. This was a demonstration. Your vessel is currently being boarded by a joint recovery team, Ren said, addressing Orvain directly now. The stolen medical supplies are being returned to their intended destination. Your crew will be released unharmed once the transfer is complete. This is not conquest, Representative Orvain. This is the return of what was taken, and a clear statement that it will not happen again. Orvain stared at the screen, his composure entirely gone now. You had ships positioned there before the attack occurred, he said slowly, as if only now understanding the full implication. You anticipated this. We prepared for it, Ren corrected. There is a difference. We hoped it would not be necessary. We built the capability regardless, because hope is not a strategy, and neither is patience without limits. The chamber fell into a stunned quiet that felt entirely different from the polite indifference I had grown used to over the years. This silence carried weight. It carried the sound of an entire room recalculating everything they believed about the species seated near the door. A representative from the Selen Compact, an older species known for their careful neutrality in most disputes, rose slowly from her seat. Her name was Ilara Voss, and she had never, in my time on the council, spoken directly to a human delegate. Ambassador Ren, she said, how long has humanity possessed this capability? Ren considered the question for a moment before answering honestly. Long enough that we could have used it many times before today. We chose not to, because we believed cooperation built through patience was more valuable than power demonstrated through force. And today? Voss asked. Today, a line was crossed that could not be allowed to stand, Ren said. Humanity does not seek dominance in this coalition. We never have. We seek the same standing every other species in this room already enjoys. Equal treatment, equal respect, an equal seat at this table, not a chair by the door. I watched something shift in the eyes of several delegates around the chamber. Not fear exactly, though there was some of that. Something closer to reassessment. The way a person looks at a familiar object once they learn it is far more valuable than they assumed. Orvain, for his part, seemed to shrink slightly under the weight of the room's attention. The Dravith Assembly did not intend to provoke conflict, he said, his earlier confidence gone entirely. Then I suggest your assembly reconsider what respect looks like moving forward, Ren said. Because humanity's patience was never a sign that we could not respond. It was a choice. That choice has limits, and today, your assembly found them. The council session ended less than an hour later, though it felt like it had lasted far longer. As delegates filed out of the chamber, I noticed something I had never seen before in 3 years of attending these sessions. Several representatives, from species who had barely acknowledged our existence in prior meetings, approached our delegation directly. Some offered brief, formal apologies for past dismissiveness. Others asked pointed questions about the technology behind the interception maneuver we had just watched unfold on screen. I found myself standing beside Grace near the chamber's exit, watching the room empty out. "Do you think this changes anything?" I asked her. She considered the question carefully before answering. "It changes how they see us," she said. "Whether it changes how they treat us long-term depends on what we do next. And what happens next. We stay exactly who we've always been," she said. "We do not become aggressors because we can. We simply stop pretending we cannot defend what is ours." 3 days later, I received a message from Ambassador Wren requesting my presence in her office. When I arrived, she gestured for me to sit, then slid a data tablet across her desk toward me. "Read this," she said. I picked it up and scanned the contents. It was a formal request from the Dravith Assembly, seeking direct negotiation with Human Fleet Command regarding resource-sharing agreements in the disputed sector. Buried within the diplomatic language was something I had never expected to see from them, an acknowledgement of prior missteps in handling human colonial shipments, along with a proposal for equal representation on the Joint Logistics Committee overseeing that region. "They are negotiating," I said, surprised. "They are negotiating because they finally understand. Negotiation is the only option left," Wren said. "For years, they assumed patience meant weakness. Today, they learned patience was simply a choice we made, one we could unmake at any moment we deemed necessary." I set the tablet down slowly, processing everything that had unfolded over the past few days. "Do you think other species will test us again?" "Some will," Wren said without hesitation. "There will always be those who need direct proof before they believe something is true. But the ones who witnessed what happened 3 days ago, the ones who saw exactly how controlled and precise our response was, they understand something important now. Humanity does not lash out. We calculate, we prepare, and when necessary, we act decisively, without excess, without cruelty, and without hesitation." I thought about the footage from the council chamber, the way our ships had moved with such quiet efficiency, disabling rather than destroying, reclaiming rather than punishing. It occurred to me that this restraint, even in a moment of overwhelming capability, was perhaps the most important message we had sent. "I used to think our patience made us invisible," I admitted, "like we were being ignored because we did not matter." "You were being tested," Wren said. "Every species in that coalition has, at some point, tested a newer member to see where the limits are. Most species respond with either submission or overwhelming aggression. We didn't either. We waited, we prepared, and when the moment came, we responded with precision instead of rage. And that's what changed things," I said, understanding settling over me fully now. "That is exactly what changed things," she confirmed. "Power without control frightens people. Power paired with restraint earns something far more valuable: respect." Over the following weeks, I watched the shift ripple through every level of coalition interaction. Trade negotiations that once dismissed human proposals within minutes now included careful, genuine consideration of our positions. Patrol assignments were redistributed more fairly across member species, no longer concentrated disproportionately on human fleets. Even casual conversations in the station's common areas carried a different tone, delegates from other species pausing to ask real questions about human history, human culture, human perspective, rather than offering the polite, distracted nods I had grown accustomed to. I sat one evening in the station's observation lounge, watching the slow rotation of stars outside the viewport, when Grace joined me, carrying 2 cups of the bitter tea that had somehow become popular among several delegations after months of exposure to human customs. "Strange, isn't it?" she said, handing me a cup. "How quickly things can shift." "I keep thinking about how close we came to letting this go on indefinitely," I said. "How much longer would we have accepted unequal treatment before someone decided enough was enough?" "We were never going to accept it indefinitely," she said. "The plan was always to demonstrate capability the moment it became necessary, not a moment before. Restraint was never about weakness. It was about choosing exactly the right moment to prove a point clearly, without ambiguity, without room for misinterpretation." I considered her words carefully. "Do you think this is over? The testing? The dismissiveness?" "No," she admitted. "There will be more challenges ahead. Some species will still doubt us. Some will still try to find weaknesses to exploit. But now, when they look at humanity, they will not see a species that can be pushed indefinitely. They will see a species that chooses patience deliberately, knowing exactly how far that patience extends, and exactly what happens when it runs out." I looked out at the stars again, thinking about everything that had happened in just a few short days. The burning convoy, the council chamber falling silent, the quiet, controlled response that had said more than any speech ever could. For 3 years, I had wondered whether humanity would ever earn the respect we deserved within this vast, ancient coalition of civilizations far older than our own. I understood now that respect was never something that could simply be requested or waited for indefinitely. It had to be demonstrated, clearly and deliberately, at precisely the right moment. The galaxy had spent years pushing against humanity, testing boundaries, assuming patience meant permission to continue indefinitely. They had learned, in the span of a single afternoon, that our patience was a choice, carefully measured and controlled, not a limitation born from weakness. We were never the quiet, harmless newcomers they assumed us to be. We were simply waiting for the right moment, to show them exactly who we had always been. And now, they finally understood.